pandemic stuff. So she just got a strong feeling it's time to go down. Her mother's getting close to 90.
You know, go ahead.
Okay, okay, and doing real good. So, yeah, I want the brothers just to keep her in mind as far as that goes. So, but if there's any other concerns?
Yeah, I just want to pray for me. God give me strength to strengthen my faith. Keep being strong. Keep running that race.
That's it.
Not have to get distracted or any kind of sway, any kind of other outside influence or anything. Came a long ways, and it's so easy to just fall back into old habits or old things.
Right, right.
And also be a good example to others, especially my family, people around my family, help them never, when the time comes when they want to come to Christ,
Right, right.
be ready for that.
Right. I like that.
Be an example.
I really like that, especially when the time comes that they want to come to Christ. Yeah, 'cause
Have the
that's
right
holding
answers.
faith. That's holding faith for them. Yeah, yeah, and we all need that strength. And that's why I think this book of Joshua is a really good book. Joshua was a man of God. I mean, and a huge example for us. And face some of the same fears we all face. We are human beings. We do have fears. And so, yeah. So that's one of the reasons I chose the book of Joshua. And we got these books here. What we're going to do, we'll go over a little bit about what we talked on last week. You might have to pick it up. And as far as Joshua, who he is, how God was using him. And but kind of went over some of the background. Oh, okay, you got your book. Background on Joshua.
What chapter?
Hmm?
What chapter did you?
First chapter. First chapter. But I talked about last week some of the background on Joshua, who he was, man of God. Joshua was like an arm bearer, or one of the main generals for Israel under Moses. He was constantly under Moses' leadership. He's constantly under the leadership of Moses, and Moses, we know what he done. I mean, just familiarize himself a little bit, that he was called to bring Egypt, the Israelites, out of Egypt. I mean, that was his calling, and we know for years, and that's exactly what he did, was brought Israel out of Egypt. But called to bring them out and take them to a promised land. They claim from Israel, from Egypt to the promised land was about an 11-day journey. But for some reason, it took them 40 years. And we know during the first 5 books of the Bible, some of those incidents, some of the things that led up to them being out in the wilderness for 40 years. And when I go into particular chapters, kind of look at it, one of the things they did after about a year out in the wilderness, they finally got to the promised land. They finally got to the Jordan, and they could see the area that they were supposed to go into. Moses had to take 12 spies, 12 spies, one out of each tribe, it's 12 tribes of Israel, and send them over into Jericho to spy out the land. We talked about last week how Joshua and Caleb was one of those, was, part of that group, two of those spies. And how Moses went in and said, listen, you guys, you go over there, you spy out the land, and you bring back a good report. Tell them how good this land is. Tell them what it looked like. Tell them the stories about the vineyards and the fruit, how the land looked, how plush and plentiful the land is, just like God said. Bring back a good report, because we're going to go in and we're going to take this land. They went over, and it was exactly like Moses and God had described. A land, what they say, that flows with milk and honey. Real plentiful. I mean, you could grow crops. You could just pretty much say, hey, look, this is a good, fertile land. It was all true, just like Moses said. But the land was occupied by people. Now these armies were well organized, and the spies said, listen, we look like grasshoppers in the sight of these men. There's no way we can possess this land or take this land.
Oh, yeah.
Everybody got one. No, I'm gonna try and get you one of these books. They ran out, but it's a special book, Joshua. So there was no way. So they end up saying, we can't do it. We can't take this land. All except two. Joshua and Caleb said, we could absolutely take the land. I want to make it plain that we could take this land. And they said, no, we can't take the land. And they said, yes, we can. And the debate got so heated while Moses and Aaron was away. The debate got so heated that the people were going to kill Joshua and Caleb. Going to kill them. And they was going to head back. They were saying, listen, why do we come out here all this way to wander around in this wilderness? I'm tired of this. Let's just go back to Egypt. I mean, Joshua and Caleb's neck was on the line. I mean, they had every intention to kill him. And if God wouldn't have stopped it, they would have been dead now. But God told through Moses, put a stop to it, and up telling them, hey, listen, this is what you wanted, to die in the wilderness, this is what's gonna happen. Your corpse will fall dead in the wilderness. You will not make it to the promised land. All except Caleb and Joshua would be the only two that came out of Egypt to see the promised land. For 40 years, those people fell dead in the wilderness. Before, they say it was like, I don't know, every day it was like 30 or 40, this is some of the estimates that I read through, of people falling dead. I mean, funerals, so to speak. Every day, people, just like God said, every day, people were just falling dead in the wilderness because they were growing older, and that whole generation had died. And it's estimated that over 1 million people, probably 1.5 million, 2 million people, whoever, I've heard of upwards of 5 million in some commentators. But it was definitely over 1 million people that came out of the land of Egypt. But everybody 20 years and up passed off because of that. But Joshua was there. Joshua and Jesus is actually the same name in ancient Hebrew. Jesus and Joshua. A lot of times in the New Testament you hear Joshua meaning Jesus. I heard one commentator say, so we actually got a book in the Bible named Jesus. Joshua. He said, yeah, because that's the same name. But Joshua was there. He was there, and we talked about it a little bit last week, when Moses was there at the rock, and when the Amalekites came and attacked Israel. Joshua was one of the generals that went in and fought, took number of fighting men and fought against the Amalekites. Moses commissioned Joshua to go out and do that along with others. And Moses would stand at the top of this hill and he would have his arms raised, okay? When his arms was raised, the Israelites was winning the battle. But after a while, his arms got tired and his arms fell down. And when his arms fell down, they started losing. So when they raised them up again, they started winning. So Aaron and some others propped Moses' arms up so they wouldn't fall down. And one of the things we talked about is the moral in the story. The moral in the story, like that, is that you're gonna get discouraged in life, but keep your head up. Don't look down. God always wants us to look up to Him. I mean, when tragedy comes, when things happen in your life, when things take place, keep your head up. I mean, the devil wants you to just look down. So every time Moses' arms slumped down, Israel will go down and start actually losing the battle. But the main thing was Joshua was there leading the troop. Joshua was by Moses' side. He's seen how God dealt with Moses constantly on a regular basis. There was a place called the Tent of Meetings. I don't know if Pastor know about it. But this place, Moses would go in and would pray, constantly pray to God. And they would relate and they would talk. And nobody could, go in except Moses. This was a special place for Moses. Well, it said that Joshua was one of the generals that stood guard right outside the tent. Now you got millions of people that would want to come in and speak to Moses. They had to go through Joshua. Joshua was there. So he was real prominent. And the Israelite army, real prominent in that day. Joshua actually had another name. And he was first called Joshua, from what I've read in earlier times, by Moses. He started calling him Joshua. Instead of, I got it written down, it was whole something, got it written in here, but it was different. Pastor may know that name, but it was another name that Joshua would go by. But Moses actually started calling him Joshua, which lines up with what he is today. Now, in 1 Corinthians, as we read this, and I want to get this particular point out, as we read through Joshua and any of the Old Testament books, 1 Corinthians 10 and 11. Oh my God. Somebody can read those.
11.
10 and 11. 1 Corinthians 10 and 11.
Now all these things happen unto them for examples.
Examples,
It's still a little different on here.
Okay.
And they are written for our admonition,
Mm-hmm.
upon whom the ends of the world are come. Keep reading.
That's 10 and 11.
No. Oh,
1 Corinthians 10 and 11. Yeah. 1 Corinthians 10, verses 10 and 11.
I'm sorry, I read it backwards. I read 11, not 10. 10 is neither murmur ye, as some of them also murmured, and were destroyed of the destroyed.
Okay, remember all the people in the wilderness, how they murmured against Moses and saying, listen, I would to God that you would have left us back in Egypt and stuff. They murmured against Moses constantly, and God said, okay, you've done that. And especially with the spies that went out and they murmured, and that's what it did. They died in the wilderness. So he said, don't let us be like that. And 11 says what?
Now all these things happen unto them for examples, and they are written for admonition, upon whom the ends of the world are come.
Okay, so these things are written that we can see how they handle their situation, their lack of faith in God, their lack of trust in God. They for examples for us, because God deals with us or dealt with people in the Old Testament and left them as examples so we can read about when we say, okay, listen, I don't make that mistake, you know. So all the Old Testament and the whole Bible really is in some way or another a point unto Christ. Okay, so we talked about some of the last week how as you read, we want to see how the literal context of the Bible affects us. Literally, how these things happen. And we know literally they stepped into the land, they took the land, and we can see that land today, even though it was given up and drawn back and given up and drawn back, and some of the other examples. But what we want to do is go ahead and read, and we can talk about what were some of the first things Joshua looked at. So, in our book, any thoughts, any questions?
Murmur is similar to complaining. Is that?
Thank you.
Yeah, murmuring is, you know, and my interpretation, and perhaps may interpret the same, a little different, is negative comments about how you handling things. I don't want to do this or that.
Right.
Just grumbling and complaining and murmuring against them, and you know, why we got to do this all the time? Just being, you know, sometimes leaders are doing the best they can. Sometimes folks, you know, talk, well, I just making things hard and difficult, murmuring against him and what he's trying to accomplish and what God is trying to get Israel to do.
It's a heavy penalty to pay for murmuring.
Right. Well, because the Bible teaches us that, and Brother Glenn brought that out in one of the courses, without faith, it's impossible to please God. That's one of the scriptures that kind of stick in our minds and out in our heads. And we can see this. What Joshua was going to do takes a lot of strong faith in God. So murmuring and complaining against the leader, you're really complaining against the person that's given the orders, so to speak, you know, and not so much against Moses or that particular leader. So you're murmuring against that falls out against God. And God is trying to bring them out of what? Take them out of slavery and take them into a land that flows with milk and honey. Now there were reasons why Moses couldn't enter into the land. That's a little bit of a different story. It takes some in depth to get into some of the things that Moses, lack of patience with the people, I would say, because of the murmuring, he wasn't able to enter into the land. But it picks up on the first chapter in the book of Joshua after the death of Moses. After the death of Moses, the servant of the Lord said unto Joshua, the son of Nun, assistant, Moses, my servant, is dead. Now therefore arise, go over this Jordan, you and all the people, into the land that I am giving you to them, to the people of Israel. Every place that thy sole of your foot will tread upon, I have given to you, just as I promised Moses, from the wilderness and this Lebanon, as far as the great river Euphrates, and all the land of the Hittites, to the great sea toward the going down of the sun, shall be your territory. No man shall be able to stand before you all the days of your life. Just as I was with Moses, so I will be with you. I will not leave you nor forsake you. Be strong, courageous, for ye shall cause this people to inherit the land that I swore to their fathers to give them. Only be strong and very courageous, being careful to do according to all the law that Moses my servant commanded you. Do not turn from it to the right hand or to the left, that you may have good success wherever you go. This book of the law shall not depart from your mouth, but you shall meditate on it day and night, so that you may be careful to do according to all that is within it. For then you will make your way prosperous, and then you will have good success. Have I not commanded you? Be strong and courageous. Do not be frightened, and do not be dismayed, for the Lord your God is with you wherever you go. And Joshua commanded the people, pass through the midst of the camp, and commanded the people, prepare your provisions. We'll go into that. But this first half begins with after the death of Moses. A lot of people think that Joshua, pretty well known and agreed upon, that Joshua actually wrote the book of Joshua, all except the very end. But they think that he also wrote the last chapter of Deuteronomy, because it picks up after the death of Moses, and some of the commentators believe that he actually wrote that last little book bit, few chapters of Deuteronomy to complete Moses' death. We know that Moses passed away, he died, and it took about 30 days to take time out to mourn the death of Moses as a fallen leader. And of course, you know, you got, like I say, who knows how many millions of people out there. Moses is dead, the leader is dead. What's the next step? Who's the next step? God always have a plan. God always have a plan, right? It said, after the death of Moses, the servant of the Lord said unto Joshua, son of Nun, Moses' assistant. And we talked about how he, and this is in that verse, yeah, we talked about how he assisted Moses and the ways he assisted Moses. Moses, my servant is dead. Now therefore arise, go over to this Jordan, you and all this people, and to the land I'm giving you. I'm giving to them, to the people of Israel. He said, now I want to get up and go over. I want you to do this, Joshua. I want you to command these people to take this land. It's time now. And I'm commissioning you as a leader of Israel. Now, now you might say, oh, okay, Joshua would say, okay, yeah, I'll take the job. Sometimes God calls us to do things in our life. Sometimes we're expected, sometimes unexpected. Brother Jay had a pretty awesome request while he was out. He said, listen, I want to be ready to have answers, so when those loved ones of mine come in and get saved, I can deal with their questions. That is faith speaking. That was, I haven't heard of a request like that before. We're just talking about own personal request. And so God is calling Joshua to go in, to be the leader, to step in. I want you to lead them into this, go over to Jordan and lead your people into the land that I'm giving you, to the people of Israel. And now notice what he says, every place that the sole of your foot will tread upon, I have given you, just as I have promised Moses, from the wilderness of Lebanon, as far as the great river, the river Euphrates, and the land of the Hittites, to the great sea going toward the going down of the sun, shall be your territory. The land that Israel actually possessed when they got in there was about 1/10 of what God was talking about. About 1/10. I mean, if you've seen a map, it says, say for instance, if you take Wichita and say, listen, God, you know, said, hey, Wichita is yours. But really, the land that he promised would stretch all the way up to Hutchinson, stretch all the way up past Newton, go all the way down past, what is that, south? Augusta. And I mean, the land was, but they never got the chance to, I mean, they got the chance, but they never possessed that much land. But this is the land that God gave them. And the question was, why didn't they go in and possess all of that land that God had given them? Well, when God gives us things to possess, he expects us to go in and possess it. If God promises certain things, let's say for instance, and I just use a job for example, say, Lord, I really need a job. God said, I got a job for you. I want you to go to so and so and so and so. I want you to talk to these people. I want you to go there. Say, Lord, I don't know. I mean, that's a lot of folks out there. I mean, who am I supposed to talk to? You got to do stuff on computers. He said, don't worry about computers. Just go in there and I want you to talk to reception. And I want, oh Lord, I ain't doing online. I mean, where can I find a job? I've been online all this time. But when the Lord promised you something, we have to move on it. And this is what he's saying. He told the people, told Israel, every place, what? In verse 3, that, what?
That the sole of your foot will tread upon, I am giving to you.
So they had to move out. They had to literally take possession. Their foot didn't walk on a lot of that land. They did not go out and receive what God was saying, like he was saying. God would have gave them every place that the sole of their foot stood on. They got content. They got in there and got a little property and said, oh, this is fine, man. This is good stuff. And God does the same thing with us. You know, we exercise our faith in his word. If we pray and ask God certain things, he'll say, yeah, move out and I'm gonna be with you. I want you to know. But there's something we have to do. We believe and react by faith. God will put us to work like that. A lot of times, praying for knowledge or praying for something particular or whatever the case is, but we have to move out. So it said, every place that the sole of a foot will tread upon, I'm giving you, just as I have promised to Moses from the wilderness, Lebanon, as far as the great Euphrates. It's talking about this territory, it's humongous, and all the land of the Hittites. I don't know how much land the Hittites had. I still don't understand. But he said, all the land of the Hittites, to the great sea, toward the going down of the sun, shall be your territory. And he's telling Joshua, he said, listen, no man shall be able to stand before you all the days of your life, just as I was with Moses. And Joshua knew how he was with Moses, right? So I will be with you. I will not leave you or forsake you. Joshua is a type of what? Again, a type of Christ, a type of Jesus. He is a type of Jesus. And these same words, Jesus, when he came in as a deliverer to bring us out of sin, out of the world, he said the same thing. He said, I'll never leave you nor forsake you. I'll be with you even until the end of the age. Pastor, you got any comments?
Do you feel like Joshua, I want to say had it made, but since he had his leader was such a great example that, you know, he followed under him. He followed under Moses, correct?
Mm-hmm.
And Moses obviously was a good example in, you know, how he lived. Do you feel like that really helped Joseph as well with his faith?
Joseph or Joshua?
Or Joshua, I'm sorry, Joshua.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Joshua was strong in his faith as far as taking orders, following through, and believing what God said he would do. Now, he's put into a different position now. He's not so much taking orders from another man, so to speak. Now, Joseph is taking orders from the Lord. So he is the one in charge. So what did he say? So I will be with you. I will not leave you nor forsake you. Any comment, Preston?
I think you're doing
Yeah,
good.
okay. Okay. So in verse 6, he said what? Go ahead. Go ahead.
Be strong and courageous, for you shall cause this people to inherit the land that I swore to their fathers to give them.
Verse 7.
Only be strong and very courageous, being careful to do according to all the law that Moses my servant commanded you.
Mm-hmm.
Do not turn from it to the right hand or to the left hand, that you may have good success wherever you go.
Okay. So he's telling Joshua, because this is a monumental task. This is not just something I want you to go out and spy the land. Come on back. This is not, okay, take this army. This is a task that he's going to be the head of millions of people. I mean, all of this, and you could sometimes feel the weight of responsibility. If you've ever been under a load of responsibility, you can feel that way. And so Joshua, no doubt, felt the weight of all of these people because he knew the burden. I mean, he was there when Moses would set up from the early mornings to late in the evening, listening to every man's complaints. Everybody got a complaint. And his father-in-law said, hey, man, what are you doing? He said, well, I gotta, I'm the leader, I gotta listen. His father-in-law said, hey, listen is what you need to do. You need to pick you out some good, wise men of counsel and let them start handling these cases. The only case you should listen to is the most difficult case that they can't solve. And the rest of them, you gotta use your people over to God. So he had to ease that load. And his father-in-law, Jethro, is the one that had to let Moses know, because there is a load that you can experience. And God is telling Joshua, be strong and courageous. Be strong. And he's going to say this several times, because not only does he have to be strong for himself, but he has to be strong for the children of Israel, for everybody. If they see a weak leader, oh, you're talking about chaos. Oh, you might go over that guy. Yeah. Sometimes you gotta be strong, because they're gonna be going up against armies, they're gonna be going up against battles, they're gonna be going up against all kinds of situations. He's gonna take them across the Jordan over to what they call the Promised Land. And they call it the Promised Land. There's a number of songs written about the Promised Land. Looked over Jordan and what do I see? Coming for to carry me home. We all heard those songs. But really, when they got over into the land of Canaan, that's when the battle started. That's when they had to really start fighting. That's when Joshua had to really command his army. That's when things had to take place. And God knew what was coming in front. So God is telling them, be strong. And that's why we look to do that in situations when we don't know what to do. Sometimes we gotta what? We gotta pray for God to give us strength. Talked about that the other day when I was talking about empower me over some of these situations. Give me that power. Let me feel that power. Let me be assured of that power that's available through the Spirit. Joshua was taking them over into a land that flowed with milk and honey. There is several New Testament books that go along with this on the spiritual sense, and Ephesians is one. Ephesians talk about all the spiritual blessings that are found through Christ. Joshua's talking about the natural blessings that God has promised and he was the one that provided. There are some comparisons between Joshua and Moses. Moses brought Israel the law. The law could never really inherit the promises, the true promises of God. That have to come by the Spirit. The law is like a schoolmaster. It's like a mirror. We can look in a mirror and we can see our problems, but we may not be able to fix it. But the Spirit of God not only can look in the mirror, but it can go inside and fix the heart. And Joshua was the one like Christ. That's why one of the reasons that they say that Joshua was the one that took them over into a land that flowed with milk and honey. The law couldn't do it. People fought the law back and forth. But through grace and truth, the grace of God, Joshua was able to take on that commission, and they done that. But he's saying, don't turn to the right, don't turn to the left. Book of the law, this book of the law shall not depart from your mouth, but you shall what? Mm-hmm.
On its day,
So,
so that you may be careful to according to all that is written.
mm-hmm. So there's, so many books, so many scriptures that dealt with us in God's word. David said, the word is like a lamp to my path. Imagine a real dark area and you need a flashlight or you need something so you can see a path. So as you go, they don't have roads like what we got. We got streets out there and we got street lights and we got all this. We can see exactly where we're going. But back in those days, there wasn't no street lights, no electricity, and you get out on a dark path and you don't know where you're at. And so you need something torch or something so you can see the path. And he said, this is how God's word is for us. It's like a lamp unto our path. Every day we need to know. We need to know the word. We need to have the assurance that God is right there to lead us. And who can't go astray? Anybody can go astray. Anybody can say the wrong thing. You ever dealt with difficult people? You can have that difficulty. Or you can say, Lord, how do I deal with this situation? And believe me, God can overturn it. God could make difficult things seem so small, minute, so to speak. And so he's telling Joshua, this law, in the book of the law, shall not depart from your mouth, but you should meditate in it day and night, so that you may be careful to do according to all that is written in it. For then you will make your way prosperous, and then you will have good success. And he said, have I not commanded you? Commanded you. Is there any commandments of God in the New Testament that the Lord give us? Do you know any commandments in the New Testament?
He said, a new commandment I give unto you, that you love one another as I have loved you.
Wow. That's actually written in the New. I knew Pastor would nail that one. That was actually written in the New Testament as a commandment to the body of Christ. That we love one another as I have loved you. I love you. Is it by this shall all men know that you are my disciples, that you have love one to another. That is one of the symbols. And again, if we turn that verse, to finish out the end of that verse, what do we say again? I have commanded, verse 8, verse 9, I'm sorry. Wow. So that's what, how many times have we said, be strong and courageous?
It's like it's 3 times.
Huh?
3 times.
Third time. I highlighted that 3 times. 3 times he said the same thing. He said the same thing. And I'm like, wow. okay, God is telling them, hey, look, I really want you to get this point. You know, I mean, I can remember, you know, saying some stuff to the kids when they were growing up. Listen, I want you, you know, get this stuff cleaned up and I want you to do it like this. Come back and I say, and don't forget, when you're doing that, to do this too. And come back again before they even get started. And I need you to make sure you get this all done. Well, I heard you. I mean, I heard you the first time. Yeah, because I want to make sure you get heard. It's sad, but we went through our deal at the NCO Academy in the Air Force, and we had to do a section on giving speeches. They said, this is how you outline your speech. You talk about, you tell them what you're gonna tell them. Tell them what you're gonna tell them. Then you tell them. Then you tell them what you told them. And so, you know, it's like 3 times. And I remember to say, one for the Father, one for the Son, one for the Holy Ghost. God is really, really landed on Joshua to be strong and be courageous. I am gonna be with you. Be strong and be courageous. Who was Joshua, you think, fighting for?
For the people of Israel?
Okay. Okay, yeah, and that's a good point, because it's gonna lead them into it. But this battle is actually God's battle. Okay, and on the spiritual sense, we're all in a spiritual war, all of us. Once you name the name of Christ, and you mean business, and you let him into your heart, you instantly in God's army. And you instantly know you can become under a spiritual attack. You're a spiritual soldier. The Bible said even the weapons that we use, it's not like the natural weapons. The Bible teaches the weapons of our warfare are not carnal. Okay, and in Ephesians 6, that's why I say Ephesians is a really good book. That start naming out our weapons, our sword, our breastplate, our helmet, and what kind of shoes we wear. And it all is symbolic to a spiritual battle that we're under. And now they're fighting this battle naturally. In Visions, we're talking about fighting a spiritual battle. But so he's letting Joshua know, okay, this is the first step, but I don't want you to be afraid. I don't want you to be terrified, because really we'll find out that this is the Lord's battle. Lord's gonna come in a mighty way. God's gonna do things in here that, oh my goodness, as Joshua the general, that he probably never even dreamed about. He's gonna see things that Moses never even saw in dealing with this army. And God's gonna do that. Okay, and then we, so, and that, at this time, Joshua kind of gets the point, okay? So, in verse 10, somebody want to pick it up? Read it in there.
Then Joshua commanded the officers of the people, saying, pass through the host and command the people, saying, prepare you victuals, for within 3 days ye shall pass over this Jordan to go into possess the land, which the Lord your God giveth to possess it.
Mm-hmm. So, he's saying, command the people, officers of the people, pass the midst of the camp, and command them to prepare. That King James said victuals, and it's talked about provisions, but we know it's food. Prepare food. But within 3 days, you're to pass over to Jordan to take possession of the land. So you got 3 days. Get yourself prepared, get yourself food in your stomach, get yourself strength up. We're gonna cross this river. A person brought a point, was this is probably the time, around this time, that, remember how Israel used to eat for 40 years? They used to eat manna. And God would bring in pheasants, fowl from the air, birds for meat, but the manna. But now they're learning to live off the land. They have to prepare their own victuals. They have to cook their own food. He said, okay, for 3 days, get yourself beefed up, let the people know, because we are gonna cross this Jordan. Now, it says, okay, and it says, and to the Reubenites, and the Gadites, and the half a tribe of Manasseh, Joshua said, remember the words of Moses, that your servant of the Lord commanded you, saying, the Lord your God is providing you a place of rest, and I will give you this land. Your wives and little ones and your livestock shall remain in that land that Moses gave you beyond Jordan. But all the men of valor among you shall pass over armed before your brethren and help them. There's a situation here that was going on. The Reubenites, Gadites, and Manasseh tribes saw a land and made a deal with Moses while he was still alive, that the land on the side of Jordan that they were on before they crossed, they wanted that land. They seen how plush the land was, how it was good to grow food, how it was plentiful, it just looked like a really good deal. So they made a deal with Moses that they would not go over Jordan. And Moses accepted it and said, okay, that's fine. He spoke to God, and God said, okay, that can happen. But when we get ready to go over, I still want all the men of fighting age to go over and help all the other tribes. We're all in this together. Then you can come back once you conquer the land of Canaan. You can come back and you can settle back on this side of Jordan. And they said, that's fine. They said, that's fine. And until the Passover Jordan, I said, read again. The Lord your God is providing you a place of rest and will give you this land. Your wives, your little ones, and your livestock shall remain in the land that Moses gave you beyond the Jordan. But all the men of valor among you shall pass over armed before your brethren and help them until the Lord give rest your brothers as he has to you. And they also take possession of the land that the Lord God has given them. Then shall you return to the land of your possession and shall possess it, the land that Moses, the servant of God, gave you beyond the Jordan toward the sunrise. So these 2.5 tribes said, listen, we're going to stay over here. God, we already cleared that with Moses, Joshua. I don't want to make no bones about it. Huge mistake. But huge mistake. This land, by them not going over the promised land, this 2.5 tribes, it cost them dearly. They settled there. Everything was good for a while. But if you read in Judges how famine and disease and other things came up against this land, these 2.5 tribes suffered horribly. There's some things in the New Testament that took place that they say was on this land when Jesus came to a man that was insane, really a lunatic, and he was in a cave and he was just cutting himself and slicing himself and just ripping himself to shit. And no man could bound this man, even with chains, because he was a lunatic and so strong. And Jesus came up to him, and the demons began to speak out. What are you doing there? Did you come to torment us before our time? Did you come to torment us before our time? He said, don't. And they said, there's a whole bunch of swan pigs over there. He said, send us over there. Don't just cast us out into utter darkness. And Jesus said, go. And 2,000 demons came out of one man and flew into these pigs. And these pigs ran over the cliff and all perished. They said, this is that land that these tribes wanted. This land was a horrible land. It turned out to be a horrible place. Why would they not want to go into a promised land? See, and the devil tries to play those tricks. He tries to get us involved in things that God hadn't promised us. The world's things may look real attractive, but what God has got promised for us far outdoes whatever the world's got. But these 2.5 tribes really got so caught up on their visual sights, on things that they, could see, instead of the promises of God that God has made them. That they convinced Moses, and Moses said, pray to God, and God said, yeah, let them have it. They don't want to go to the promised land. Who wouldn't want to go in? And so there are times in your life that things may look like it's better on the other side. Believe me. But at the end, there are other times in the Bible. We know same situation with Lot. Lot's tribe and Abraham. Abraham was Lot's uncle. They both had a group of people, cattle, tribe, and whatnot, but there was some dispute against Lot's people and Abraham's people. And so Abraham and Lot got together. And Abraham said, well, what do you want to do? And Lot said, I don't know. Abraham said, I'll tell you what, you pick any direction you want to go, any direction, and I'll go the other. And Lot said, oh, I can. Lot he picked a land that he thought was the best land, the best territory, down there by a place called Sodom. He picked this land because it looked so plush, and Abraham went the other way. And when all was all said and done, Lot barely escaped with his life. Him and his son, oh yeah, I mean the place God rained down fire. That was the most wicked, most ungodly place. That's one of the places in the Bible that says God, you're talking about utterly destroyed. They claim that even to this day, that there's a place called the Dead Sea, where nothing comes in and nothing comes out, just a bunch of salt and stuff like that. That's there. They say that the Dead Sea is about 1,300 feet deep. And they say the reason that that big hole is there, and it's just the Dead Sea, is because at the bottom of that, that's what Sodom and Gomorrah was. I've heard that. Not saying it's 100% accurate or anything, but a lot of people believe that. A lot of even scholars believe that. That hole is there because that's where God rained down fire. Nothing goes in it. Nothing can live in the Dead Sea. That's what they call it, dead.
So that was actually a city?
Sodom and Gomorrah?
That was actually the city?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Now, Sodom and Gomorrah was actually the city. Now, the story about the Dead Sea, there is a place of the Dead Sea in that same region, and they believe that's where Sodom and Gomorrah was. When God rained down fire and brimstone so much, and so he devastated the place, even a lot of the areas around the place. And that's the place that Lot chose. And if it wasn't for the angel of the Lord, Lot would have died. The angel of the Lord had to come in and take Lot. Let's go. We got to get out of here. God is raining down fire. Lot's wife was so captivated by this place. And her heart was so involved in what was going on in the city of Sodom and Gomorrah. The angel said, when you leave, don't look back. Leave this place alone. There are times you don't want to look back in your past. Don't even want to bring it up. But he told Lot and his daughters and his wife, don't look back. And the old saying is that she looked back, and when she did, we know what happened. Pillar of salt. And they call this place like the Dead Sea, the saltiest sea in the world. But she looked back. Some scholars said she actually wasn't so much in looking back, but as they were leaving and fleeing the city, she was just lingering behind and saying, I just don't want to go, and why should I leave? And God was saying, don't look back. And she lingered and lingered and lingered, and when the city was destroyed, she got caught up in the destruction, because that's really where her heart was at, with that place.
That makes sense.
But these two tribes, these 2.5 tribes, and it always kind of amazed me that Messiah, the half tribe, was just a half tribe. I guess the tribe must have had a dispute. Crazy, I ain't staying over here. God's got a promised land for us, I'm gonna stay here? You got to be kidding me. And some of these tribes, who knew the size of these tribes? It had to be, in 100,000, as far as the people was concerned. This was a huge nation. And so they decided that they wouldn't go over until, they would stay on that side of the Jordan because it was more plentiful. Anybody got any thoughts?
This is good.
Any thoughts at all?
It's very good, very refreshing.
And just a question. From what you know so far about the book of Joshua, what excites you?
Have to be, that we know that we're covered, and we're encouraged to be strong and courageous. Multiple times,
Multiple times.
that's really encouraging.
That's,
Gives hope, and that really help strengthen the faith, just knowing that he told him not to worry, be strong and be courageous. Man, he was facing bigger things than what we did.
oh yeah.
So just with that, it's like, man, we got a lot of stuff we worry about, different things, family and health and all kind of stuff, but that 3 times.
3 times.
Yeah, it's,
And God, yeah.
It reminds me of Peter. When Jesus asked Peter,
Oh, yeah.
"Do you love me?" Yeah, he asked him 3 times.
3 times, yeah.
And
Yeah. That's a good point. That's a real good point.
there's a lot of, if you think, in history, a lot of times they tell you one time, you're warned one time.
Mm-hmm.
But it's
One
like,
warning.
you're told more than once, you're given a chance. It's that love and mercy that God has.
Right.
Okay, yeah, you might be afraid once, and you might be afraid again, but then you're encouraged again and again. Yeah, it's like, man, you can't, if I'm told that multiple times, you're given up multiple opportunities, multiple chances to.
Multiple times to come and let you know that he'll be there. And because God is not there to just throw us out to see how we react. I think that, yeah. So that's a real exciting part. As far as that, so is there anything that confuses on what we know? Is there any confusion so far?
no, it's a lot of good stuff. I would like to point out that the reason why I call Manasseh called a half tribe is because he's from Joseph. And so when Jacob was given the blessing, he gave Joseph a double
Right.
blessing when his 2 sons Manasseh and Ephraim.
Right.
So
Right.
that's why they're being
The
considered a
half tribe. Right. That's a real good point.
I
Right.
thought so, but then I had to.
Yeah, I had to double check it,
like,
cause
make sure.
I looked at that and, looking at other things, I'm like, wait a minute, why would that be considered the half tribe? What is, and I dig into it in detail, but yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about now.
So that tribe got half the blessing? Is that?
Well, Joseph, so there was 12 tribes of Israel, and Joseph was one of those tribes. But his son, Joseph got a double blessing. So they all got a blessing from Jacob. But Jacob gave Joseph a double blessing because he was the son of his old age, and he also saved him. Well, God saved him through Joseph. So when he blessed him when he was dying, he gave him a double blessing to his sons. So sometimes when you hear about the 12 tribes, you'll hear about Ephraim, and you'll hear about Manasseh, because he got the double blessing that he gave to his sons, to his 2 sons.
And these tribes, Manasseh going along with the other ones and decided not to go into the promised land. And we read in Corinthians, remember how it talked about those, why these things was written? That we can look back and we can see how people will react. And then, I know what time is running out. And Romans 4, 19 through 23, just a few chapters. Romans 4, 19 through 23, I just thought about that. One of the things that, if somebody got it and wanna read it.
And being not weak in faith, be considered not his own body. Now, I'll read it. Well, this is King James, okay?
Mm-hmm.
So, and being not weak in faith, be considered not his own body now dead, when he was about 100 years old, neither yet the deadness of Sarah's womb. He staggered not at the promises of God through unbelief, but was strong in faith, giving glory to God, and being fully persuaded that what he had promised, he was able also to perform. And therefore it was imputed to him for righteousness. Now it was not written for his sake alone that it was imputed to him. To 24?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But for us also, to whom it shall be imputed, if we believe on him that raised up Jesus our Lord from the dead, who was delivered for our offenses and was raised again for our justification.
So it said, just like he was dealing with Joshua and promised to be with him, he'll do exactly the same thing for us. These things that, just like he was dealing with Abraham. Abraham didn't stagger at the promises of God, but became strong in faith. He didn't waver. When God spoke to his heart, God will speak to your heart. 100%, ain't no question about it in my mind. If you ask, seek the Lord while he may be found, God will speak to your heart. And when he speaks to your heart and have you move out on whatever it is, he will 100% be with it. He said, when he spoke to Abraham and told him that he was going to have a son and what was going to take place and all these things, the Bible said he didn't stagger at the promise. He didn't waver and say, oh, you know what, I'm kind of an old man now. How's this going to happen? He didn't stagger at the promise of God, but was strong in faith. And he said, now this wasn't written just for our sake, just for us to read, just for his sake, but for us also. All these promises that God made is made for us also. Now these people were going into a land, a promised land, a homeland, a territory. We talked last week, one of the reasons why God decided to give the Israelites their own land. You remember, why do you think it's so important that Israel have their own land? Okay, now we talked about, you might remember that, but one of the major reasons that was so important, I believe, that Israel had to have their own land, because the King of Glory was going to come to this world. And he's going to be born in a place called Bethlehem of Judea. And God knew it. And God had this point. This is my land. This is where I want him at. So I don't care who's there. And some of the things you think, well, why God drove these people out of this territory? It seemed like it was so, it seemed like it would just kept people away, there was a place that Adam and Eve had, and it was kind of driven out the Garden of Eden. Well, how come, God's gonna move these people out? These people were, in some cases, extremely wicked. They would have sacrificed their own kids to strange gods. They were they had no respect, no regard, no even concern about God, morals, how God operated, worked with his people, could care less. And God was going to use Israel as a light for every other nation. They were supposed to be a light for the world, so they can see how, okay, that's how God wants us to live. This is how God wants us to operate. Israel was set not to be somebody, that was just special and God really liked. No, they were supposed to be an example for the rest of the world. The Bible says we're a light for the rest of the world, a city on a hill. And that's how Israel was, that was their commission, that was their design. And this land was for God's purpose. And So that's one of the reasons that I really believe that that land that God had pinpointed was there because the Messiah would come through that land. Any other thoughts?
Hey, what book goes before Joshua?
Okay, you got the law books, you know, the first 5 books, Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy, then the death of Moses. Then Joshua come in, and then the judges and the kings, and yeah. But yeah, so that's a good question, because it's real important, because Joshua picks right up after the death of Moses, like we talked about. Any other thoughts? So, yeah, and next week I'm gonna ask Pastor, I won't be here. Don't mind going through the second chapter of, and it's some really, really, really good material in there. This is when they actually gonna prepare themselves to go over into the land. You're gonna see some things that are similar to what Moses did. We're gonna talk about some person that's in the land that God has used tremendously, and it's gonna be real good. It's gonna be the second chapter of the book of Joshua. When Joshua got his commission, he's got the people down eating their victuals. They got 3 days to get their shirt up, because down is on. Now the commission's on. But out of today, one of the things he's looking at is they want us to be strong in what we're doing and what we believe. God will be with us, regardless of whatever we do. People can have an opinion. Everybody's got an opinion. But God's got the last say so. He got the last say so. Any other thoughts? We're good?